Hi, I'm Sam. Um, have you ever felt like leaving evangelical Christianity meant losing everything? Your community, identity, even your connection with God? You're not alone. I felt that way quite a lot myself. I have a complicated relationship with Christianity. I was raised in Pentecostal Christianity. And oftentimes it felt like rejecting that faith growing up meant rejecting God altogether. And that led to some toxic situations in my life. But I've come to understand through a lot of study and and experience that that is not the case. That you can retain a connection to God while sort of coming to a new understanding of what that means. So that's what I'm here to talk about. I'm Sam Bolton, here to explore big questions about theology, philosophy, spirituality, and how to find meaning in a world that's constantly changing, AI, uh, political upheavals, etc. So today I'm going to talk about reimagining your faith after leaving evangelicalism, finding God outside of dogma, and discovering new sources of meaning in a rapidly changing world. So thanks for tuning in. I've been watching a lot of YouTube content lately, and content about starting a YouTube channel, and they tell you to just start. So this is not polished. I don't have a fancy studio. This is my bedroom, and I'm wearing just a black T-shirt. This is just me here. I got the kids in the other room. I'm watching. So this is just something I'm going to try to do on a regular basis, and as things grow, I'll make changes, and we'll grow the channel from here, and hopefully grow a community of people who can talk about spirituality and religion and philosophy and faith, and in a safe environment where you can challenge big ideas. So that's what I'm aiming to create here. I do. I've got a lifetime of study in philosophy and religion. I've got a bachelor's in history. I've got a master's in theology from a Christian university, and I'm just studied different religions and philosophy my whole life. So I'm I think I'm well versed in this topic, and I'm willing to and eager to share that with the world, and create a community around that. So for many of us who grew up in evangelical spaces, leaving can feel like losing not just a belief system, but even a community and even God altogether. Like a lot of the people I grew up with, they got to a certain age and they felt like maybe this God that they were sold when they were a child, who seems very angry and judgmental, who's going to send their gay friend to hell or something like that. Maybe that's not a God they want to serve or worship. In fact, I remember I was maybe 21, 22, and I was listening to some David Icke talk, or I don't remember, or maybe it was Jordan Maxwell, one of those conspiracy guys, and all of a sudden I had this vision of Yahweh as described in the Bible and then in the book of Revelation, sort of coming to earth, and he's laying waste to all the sinners and executing his judgment as predicted. And it really stuck. It all of a sudden it hit me that what I was really envisioning was similar to, like, what if this extremely powerful entity from outer space came to Earth and just started annihilating billions of people, you know, whether they claim that they had a right to do it or not. I don't think I would be okay with that, and that's not a God I would want to serve, right? And that really scared me, and I think maybe as an adult, that was one of the pivotal moments for me where I started down the path of questioning and reimagining God and what that meant, what that means. So yeah, a lot of folks who have that experience as a young adult and see uh, that the God that they were sold is a scary, capricious, angry, judgmental figure. They think that they have to abandon their faith in God altogether. But I would posit that instead you should come up with a new idea of who God is. That it makes a lot of the arguments that monotheists and Christian philosophers make about God and about the universe seemingly having a creator, and just the existence of consciousness in human beings and those sorts of things, I think still hold up. But that doesn't mean you have to pair those arguments with the description of Yahweh as depicted in the Old Testament. Like if you were to take the Old Testament literally, of course, I think the Bible is mostly mythology with a little bit of history mixed in there. But we can get into that another time. But it's tough when you grow up in an evangelical culture in America, because it's very difficult to continue on in faith in God if you lose your evangelical doctrines and dogmas that you were raised with. So yeah, that's what I want to talk about big time on this channel. A lot of other things as well, but that's definitely one of the big topics I want to address. So it's disorienting. Obviously, it takes years to get over, but it can also be very freeing, leaving that idea of God, because you no longer have to, feel like you might go to hell if you misstep, or that most of the people your friends and family, may be destined for eternal hellfire. You don't have to feel like there's a demon around every corner, behind every sickness, responsible for any rustling in the bushes, like I saw a lot of in that community. You no longer feel like every bad thing that happens in the world is a judgment from Yahweh or something like that. So it can be very freeing to walk away from that. But it also leaves you kind of questioning your meaning and purpose in life. I see that a lot in the world. You know, as Christianity fades in the West, that's a big problem. People feel like they don't have any purpose or meaning without their childhood faith, and also as jobs and employment are being replaced, uh, predicted to be replaced by AI in the coming years. A lot of people, if they don't get their meaning and purpose from their faith or their religious community, they get it from their career or their job, and now that's being taken away. So what does that mean for people? How do we find that meaning and that purpose after those things start to fade? We're really coming into a new type of society that's going to demand of us that we sort of take responsibility for our own spiritual life and find meaning and purpose within, look within. And as Christ is recorded to have said in the New Testament scriptures, the kingdom of God is within you, you know. So that's one golden nugget in there that I point to and say that has a lot of truth in it. So the world's changing rapidly. AI is reshaping work, automating jobs. So if we're not defined by labor or our faith, who are we, right? These changes feel like a loss, and it's normal to go through the 7 stages of grief when you feel these losses. But it's also an invitation to dig deeper into yourself and find out, who am I? Why do I do the things I do? And that's a process I feel like I've been through the last 5 or 6 years. I adopted these 3 girls out of foster care, and I didn't have any kids before that, so I went from 0 to 3. Uh, my wife and I did really quickly, and we had to learn about trauma and the impact of trauma. We had to learn about how the brain develops and these things. And when you're a parent, you're really forced to kind of reevaluate your own childhood and how you were raised and what the impact that had on you and how you developed as an adult. You know, so I had to face things about my childhood and my trauma that I hadn't done before. So that's that's something that you really have to process and go through, that process of grief and facing that trauma. So that's another thing I want to address in my coming videos. So finding out what really matters, digging down deep, getting past your trauma, and finding all these disparate pieces of yourself that were broken by different experiences you've had, and bringing them back together into a whole person. That's what I'm all about, and that's where you find your whole true self, is when you're able to bring those pieces back together. So and that's hard work, because when you dig down deep and find those disparate pieces, you're going to find out that there's parts of yourself deep down that you don't like, that are pretty ugly, that are motivated by ugly things, fear and anger and lust and the things that we might call sin. There are parts of yourselves that are motivated by that, and the challenge is to confront, embrace, and realize that this is a part of you, and it needs to be brought back into the whole. There is a part of you that is animalistic, right? That is motivated by passions. And the trick is learning how to make that a part of yourself, not reject it, and even embrace and love that part of yourself while not letting it control and run the show, right? Maintaining that rational executive function, letting that run the show. That's the tricky part. So asking those deeper questions after losing that sense of meaning. Who am I? What am I all about? And then reimagining your faith after evangelicalism, not losing your faith in God altogether, I'm not saying it's, if you think atheism makes the most sense, then, and you've done the research and the work, that's fine. I'm not saying that that's, absolutely 100% wrong or anything. But for me, I find that there's too many mysteries in the universe to completely throw out the idea of a spiritual realm or God or a creator. But there's plenty of unique and varied ideas out there about what that means. It's not just this literal evangelical interpretation that so many of us in America grew up with. So you can still connect with the divine in other ways. Looking within you and finding it within is a major one. I recommend that. Through nature, through your relationships with other people, just quiet moments in prayer and meditation when nobody else is awake, and you feel that sense of awe and wonder and inspiration. That's a connection with the divine, I feel, as well. And I don't think that is Yahweh. Yahweh is a local tribal god from thousands of years ago. That's not the creator of the universe, I would posit. And if Yahweh exists, maybe he does. Maybe there are powerful spiritual beings, gods, quote unquote, small g gods that exist. Then that's a fearsome being that I wouldn't want to be friends with. If you read about the way he treats his followers and regards people in the Old Testament. But still, there's a power greater than Yahweh. There's a creator of the universe of perfect love and perfect justice and perfect knowledge, who isn't motivated by animalistic passions and emotions like Yahweh seems to be. So move past that idea and get to the core of who God is. Saint Anselm, Thomas Aquinas, Plato, Plotinus. These are the philosophers and thinkers, I think, that really got at this transcendent, all-loving God that is at the ground of all being and is at the core of our heart as humans. So what are some parts of your faith that still resonate as you're walking away and deconstructing Christianity or maybe Islam or some other restricting monotheistic religions? I think the existence of a creator for me is huge. That creator is omnibenevolent or all perfect loving. That's huge for me. That there is like an order and a logos to the universe. That there's a realm of ideal forms. I think these are aspects of actually Greek thought and pagan religion that were brought into Christianity and refined by the Christian philosophers in the medieval ages. These are the jewels of the Christian faith that I don't want to lose, right? So I hang on to those. But yeah, bringing in and keeping some of your spiritual practices, meditation and prayer, are still great to do. And there's some other alternative spiritual practices maybe you can learn about that might work for you as well. And then, seeking out a community of people you can work with and speak to who aren't going to judge you for your questions and thoughts. Some churches are great about that. I still go to church with my family. My family still believes in Christianity, and I go to church with them. And I look for folks who are friendly and and I can talk to in an open way. They're few and far between, frankly, living in the South. But also, Alcoholics Anonymous is another great place. If you read through the big book that they wrote in the 50s, the way that they interact with God and the divine, it's a very open-ended, mysterious. It's just a power greater than yourself, right? So, a lot of AA meetings, there's a lot of conservative Christians there, but you can probably find a good meeting where people are open to talking about conceptions of God that go beyond dogma, So that's important as well. I've gotten a lot of benefit from AA and getting clean and sober. So that's another good spot. So that's important as well. And then, yeah, so, and I really think building authentic relationships with friends, being open, and your communication, being radically honest, that's a huge place to find meaning. Expressing yourself through creativity, moving forward into the future where maybe robots are going to replace your jobs and you're going to have a ton of free time, and we're all going to be living like the aristocrats from a Jane Austen novel or something, learning to paint or play music or some other expression of creativity is going to be a huge way that many of us will find meaning in this age we're moving into. And then, yeah, acts of service, another huge thing put forward by AA and most other faiths too. You can find your sense of divinity and your sense of purpose in serving others. Whether that's volunteering at a soup kitchen or helping raise some traumatized children, or donating your time and money to another worthy cause that maybe you feel strongly about. And then, yeah, just exploring God beyond those rigid frameworks, it allows for a more personal and transformative experience, really. One, I guess if you could put a label on me in all of this, I would say the closest thing that I am, I'm thinking maybe a Neoplatonist. It's a philosophical religious movement from the early, like the 300s, 400s, a little bit after Christianity started. This fellow named Plotinus was taking the philosophy of Plato and refining it and developing some spiritual ideas and practices from it. I think this is the closest thing to the truth as I see it. It really sees all things as emanating from a single source, the one or the good, they might call it, and views this material world as connected to higher spiritual realities. Now, when I was still technically a Christian, I was a split man, a double-minded man, as James puts it in his epistle, right? And there was a big part of me that was like a Gnostic. I was convinced that God and the creation was evil, and the creator was evil, and this world was nothing but suffering, and the goodness of God was to be found beyond the material world. But then when I was able to be open and admit that I did not really believe in Christianity anymore, the dogmas that it taught, then I was able to come to a sense of peace and realize that creation is not evil, and there's a lot of good and beauty here, and most of the evil that we experience comes from humans. Not all of it, of course. There's natural disasters and disease and those sorts of things. But, those are mysteries that we can explore. But, yeah, that's Neoplatonism differs from Gnosticism in that it still sees there being a transcendent one that's above all these gods and beings and things that pagans believed in. Hermes, Thor, Yahweh, all these gods that pagans believed in, called the one or the good. And it's above those things, but that doesn't mean that the creation itself is evil. It's just, it's lower, it's denser, and we have to learn how to connect to the higher spiritual realities and rise above the evil and the struggle here, and learn how to transmute it and make it into something good and beautiful. So, yeah, I'm into that right now. I think that's the closest thing to what I am. But there's a new book that's come out, and a lot of folks are saying that this particular author has actually solved the hard problem of consciousness, you might have heard them say. It's from an author named David Bentley Hart. He's a prominent philosopher and theologian, universalist Christian, and he argues something similar, that all reality is actually grounded in mind, in consciousness, that everything is full of meaning and intelligence rather than being cold and mechanical. And that's, maybe you could also describe that as idealism. And this was actually a very competitive theory or framework for reality in the 1800s, not too long ago, before materialism really grabbed hold of the West. There was actually big debates in academic communities back then between idealism and materialism, and which made more sense. Obviously, materialism won out in academia, but there's a lot of rich scholarship going back, centuries and centuries, that bolsters the idea that idealism or consciousness is actually primary, and matter emanates from consciousness, from mind. So I'm into that as well. And then I had this theory I wanted to bring up. I'm just sort of spitballing some ideas that I want to elaborate on in future videos, but I had this theory that the trauma we experience and that we get so hung up on, every one of us, childhood trauma, that we sort of just walk our entire lives living with the way that it's hobbled us. This is almost a part of the human condition, right? This is something that everybody must go through, and this is the maturing process, moving from a child to an adult, is that trauma, right? Coming to grips with the harshness of reality, and how you have to live and be as a human to survive and thrive in this world is a traumatic transition from the innocence of childhood. And that's really what these traumas are. And ancient, more traditional cultures, tribal cultures, indigenous people, they sort of intuitively understood this. And this is why they put their people through trials and rites of passage and ordeals. You know, they have to go out and kill their first tiger or leopard or something by themselves with a specific ritualistic knife, you know, at age 13 or something. Or maybe they had to take an intense hallucinogenic drug and face down the DMT elves in the other realm all by themselves and pass these certain tests. And the idea, I think, behind that was to induce this great trauma all at one time, get it out of the way so you can transition, you can emerge from that cocoon into the adult that you need to be to, be a benefit to your community and your family and yourself. You know, we don't have these rites of passage in the West. We don't have these socially instituted rites of passage. There are certain things that certain families or communities do, but overall, you're just sort of, you're left to go to counseling for the rest of your life and learn techniques from self-help books and things to deal with this transition. But I think it would be better if we had some sort of rite of passage when we're young to get this out of the way and help us grow up, before we turn 18. And it reminds me of that scene in Dune where Paul is at the beginning of the original Dune book. Paul Atreides is put through this trial and this test before he goes to Dune, the planet Dune, Arrakis. It's called the Gam Jabbar. The Reverend Mother of the Atreides, or the Bene Gesserit witches. She brings this box in, and he has to put his hand in it, and it gives him the sensation like his hand is being melted away with intense flame. And he feels as if that's happening. It's so realistic. And she has a needle to his neck and says, if you pull your hand out of the box, I'll prick your neck with this needle and you'll die instantly. There's a poison, So he has to stand there and he has to let the flesh burn away from his hand without moving and without wincing in pain. And this is a test to see whether, I think she even says, to test and see whether you are a man or an animal, something along those lines. So this test, these rites of passage that humans are put through, this trauma that we have to experience and overcome, this is the transition to allowing our rational brain be the captain, be in the captain's chair, and not let our animalistic impulses run the show like we do as children. And when you live that way for the rest of your life, when you live as a human and not an animal, then that's when you can build communities that thrive. That's when you can be creative and make new things. That's when you can be a benefit and a blessing to yourself and your family. But if you live as an animal, then you're a slave to your passions, right? You're a slave to your addictions, booze, food, porn, whatever it is, right? Drugs, you're a slave to your animalistic impulses. And you live a life of fear and hate and anger. Because that part of us, that animalistic part of us, that's the ego, and that's the part of us that is doomed to die, right? It will die one day. And its whole purpose of being, its purpose is to do everything it can to prolong its life and to get as much stuff and experiences and just accumulation of crap that it can before it dies. And so it's constantly living by faith and by deceit. Not by faith, living by fear, by deceit, by anger. But that part of us that lives on past bodily death, I believe, is that rational mind. Reason rides the passion as a rider rides the horse, is an old Roman saying. That's the part of us that we need to develop. That we need to develop courage in, so it can take control of the animal and tame and break the beast part of us. So these are just some of the things that I'm interested in and want to talk about. And I'll continue making videos and seeing what people like and seeing which videos do well and which videos don't, and I'll take it from there. But let's just recap a few points that I talked about. Leaving evangelicalism doesn't mean losing faith in God. It's actually an opportunity to reimagine and reshape it in a way that will bless you and help your life and help you in this new age we're going into, where meaning making is going to be of utmost importance. Finding meaning isn't tied to traditional frameworks like work or dogma. It can come from your relationships, your creativity, acts of service, and your reimagining of spirituality. And philosophies like Neoplatonism that really resonate with me, stories like Dune and other things, Lord of the Rings and different stories people love. These can hang on one second. That's my ringtone. Oh jeez. These are the things that can benefit us. I'm probably gonna get copyright strike for that. Oh jeez, now I'm zooming. Gosh, hang on. Oh my goodness. These are the things that are probably going to help us move forward in this world of meaning making. Okay, goodness gracious. Okay, we got it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the future may feel uncertain, but it's also full of possibility. By reimagining faith and embracing change, we can become something greater than we ever thought. So I'll leave you with that. Let me know what you think in the comments there, and have a great evening. God bless.